and y'all were like, oh goodness, like, she's going to sing any minute now.
Well, that'd be all right.
That's tomorrow. Tomorrow in church. If you want to come watch me sing, come to church. How's everybody doing today?
Great.
Awesome. Welcome to the Texas Quilt Museum. My name is Deborah Bradley. I am the director here at our wonderful museum on the square in downtown Grange. Thanks for coming out and on this beautiful windy day and sharing your time with us. Before we get started, I just wanted to give you just a brief introduction to the space where you are seated. So the Texas Quilt Museum was in a building constructed in 1892. Everything used in the construction of the building was taken from Grange or Fayette County, where we're seated. We've got longleaf pine floors. Each one of the columns in gallery number 1 were carved from their own longleaf pine tree. The bricks in gallery 1 and in gallery 3 here were all baked out in a field. And so how they did that is they took a whole bunch of hot wood and they burned it down to some really hot coals. And then they put the raw bricks out there and left them out there stoking the coals for about 2 weeks. The bricks in gallery 2 were actually baked in a kiln. I've been told that the clay comes from the same location, but the different methods yielded the different colors. And I don't know if you've noticed, but it's kind of a tan color brick in this part of the museum and a redder color brick in the back. If you notice the rocks that are in the corner back here at the back of gallery 1, those were taken when they raised the old LaGrange City Hall building. So they were building a new one and they knocked down the old one, and we joked that they were just tired baking bricks. They just shoved a bunch of rocks in the holes. But I think it offers a lot of beautiful visual texture to the gallery 1. It also adds to the existing history because they do predate our 1892 structure. In 2010, our founders, Carrie Bresnahan and Nancy O'Brien Puentes, who are also the founders of the International Quilt Festival. Anybody familiar with that? A couple of you. So the International Quilt Festival takes place in Houston every fall for about 10 days and at the George R. Brown Convention Center. And so their desire was to have a location that was central in Texas, open year-round, that showcased the art of quilting and textile art. So they happened upon our building and purchased it and restored it to 95% original integrity. It took about a year, and since then we have welcomed almost 100,000 folks from every state in America and 58 countries across the world. So our little hamlet has seen quite a few people, and if you haven't had a chance to put a pin in the map back there yet by the library, please do that, because then you'll just be with us forever. So yeah, we always love to see where folks are from. So I guess a couple things that we have here, if you haven't discovered the Pierce Memorial Library, it's the largest quilt research library in the Southwest. It has been painstakingly archived by our own Dr. Jim Ayers, otherwise known as Doc. He has over 13,000 periodicals, books, and catalogs available for quilt enthusiasts or quilt inspiration or quilt research. It's also the home to our Cobalt Antique Textile exhibit, located in those big cabinets with the real skinny drawers. We have some samples of fabric that date back to the 1700s back there. So we've got chinoiserie, chintz, block printing, and toile de juillet. And they all have some type of provenance with it to tell you a little story about where they come from and the history of where it came, where it was made, etc. Some of them date back, like I said, to the 1700s, and they're just amazing. Of course, not to be forgotten is our museum store. If any of you feel enlightened to lighten your pocketbook before you leave, we're happy to help you with that. Of course, 100% of all sales proceeds goes back to the bottom line of the Texas Quilt Museum, and it helps us keep our doors open. And then on the other side of that far wall in Gallery 1 is the Grandmother's Flower Garden. So the LaGrange Garden Club has adopted us to help us get blooming again. The weather has been really brutal on our period garden. It's one of the very few authentic period gardens in the state of Texas, meaning that everything that's planted out there was native in Fayette County from 1890 to 1930. Unfortunately, I think the weather was just different back then, and so now we're trying to figure out new varieties of those same antique plants that lived back then that will actually survive the weather. So it's all been kind of a fun litmus test, running around out there clipping and dipping and shoveling and learning all kinds of things myself. But June 1st, we're having our first live butterfly release. It's a fundraiser for the museum for our children's programs. We're looking at trying to get some sewing classes started for beginners, and yeah, we're going to teach some quilting, going to usher in a new legacy of quilters. So it's just, we're trying to get a whole bunch of children's programs launched, and the sewing machines have been something that people have been asking for so that we can start offering classes. If you haven't had a chance to take a look at this little thing right here, this is just some events that are going on from now until June, and you'll see that we've got a kids quilt camp and we've got a kids needle felting camp coming up. We also have yoga classes, meditation, and just a whole lot of fun stuff using this museum in lots of different ways. So let's see, what have I missed? Oh, so a couple of upcoming things. After this gallery talk today, the city of LaGrange has the LaGrange Uncorked Wine Stroll. So if anybody feels like they want to hang around for a little bit longer and explore our downtown, there's a wine stroll, and it's gonna, I think there's 12 or 14 wineries featured. And then also the Texas Quilt Museum has a bruschetta booth out there, so if you're hungry, we're raising money for the kids projects again, so that's available for you. March 23rd, we've got an Easter egg hunt in our grandmother's flower garden, and on April 13th, we have Sherry Littman-McCauley, who's also with the Sacra group, that's a featured artist in this room. She'll be here on the 13th talking about the secrets of painting with thread. Let's see. Oh, I talked about our butterfly release. This is June 1st. You do not have to be present. Like I said, it's a fundraiser for the museum. We've got lots of school kids coming to help us release butterflies that day. So if you want to dedicate a butterfly in memory or in honor of someone or something, we're happy to release that butterfly for you. Please stick around afterwards. We've got door prizes, and I guess without further ado, I'd love for you to meet our guest speaker, Cara Gulati. She joins us from the SACWA group of Northern California and Northern Nevada. She has been integral in helping us make this exhibit happen. And I personally would just love to applaud her and her efforts in helping us with this exhibit. As soon as we found out we were going to have this, I just could not wait to get these up on the walls. They couldn't get here soon enough. So I would love for you to help me welcome Cara Gulati. Thank you so much for being here today.
And that's it? How do I sound? It's always weird talking on the mic. Okay, there we go. Just wave my arms. Sure. Okay, I can do it. All right. Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. I am the curator of this show, and I wrote down these wonderful words that I'm the curator of the Prism Play exhibition that surrounds you today. So my whole vision for this was to create something that had the whole color wheel going around, which I thought was kind of a fun idea, and I hadn't seen that before. And you probably want to know, who am I? For 20 years, I taught quilting, published books. I've always been an art quilter. They have two of my old books here for really cheap. But these are the kinds of things that I used to make. And so you can probably guess which one of those four is mine. Okay. I loved it. Teaching and lecturing was great. I got to go all over the world. It was such a treat, and I haven't missed a show except for COVID at the Houston International Quilt Market and Quilt Festival since 1998. So you guys have the best show in the country. You know it's the most well attended, right? So then I also belong to Studio Art Quilt Associates, which I joined around the same time. I always liked traditional quilts, but my background is in fashion. So I wanted artsy-fartsy things because I thought that would be so much more fun. And I also joined that group in 1998. And it was started by a gal, Yvonne Porcella, with the idea, and I have to read this to you too, to gather art quilters and textile artists to promote our textiles as fine arts. So maybe some of you have heard that there's the argument of, is this a craft or is it fine art? And in my world, even if you've got a traditional quilt, if you put a sleeve on it and you hang it on the wall, it's art. It's a different kind of art, it's beautiful, and that's what matters. If we like it, we should put it up. And it doesn't have to match your couch. So, whoops, now I'm gonna throw everything on the ground. So if you have any interest in art quilting, you can talk to me afterwards. They have some brochures here, and there's a little discount code if you're interested in joining. So that takes me to why this exhibition came about. I was the regional rep for the Northern California, Northern Nevada region from May 2020 to May 2022. And all the museums closed, the galleries closed, and the way the regions make money and pay for fun things to do is by getting exhibitions together and publishing a catalog, right? So we had to come up with something new, and we couldn't meet in person. Everything was a Zoom. Remember when suddenly it's all cut off and everybody looked like a film strip, or depending on what deal you were using. And I just thought to myself, our region needs some money. We have some money, but we need more money. And how are we going to make this happen? What can we do that's different than we've done in the past? So I thought of this idea, and I got together with Barbara Kibbe, who was our exhibitions chair at the time, and we decided we had to come up with a way to make this happen. So normally when you have a call for entry, you have a prospectus and it says, meet all these ideas, and then take a picture of it and send it in. But we knew we couldn't do that. So we came up with a much better idea. Joan Wolfram is very well known as a color expert in the quilting industry, art quilters and traditional quilters. She's written tons of books. And I was lucky enough to be across from her 3 or 4 times at Wholesale Quilt Market. And she's a wonderful lady, and I called her up. I said, do you remember me? And she goes, oh yeah, I remember you. So what does that tell you? And I said, we're putting together this exhibition. Would you be interested in being our juror? And I told her about the concept, and she got really excited. And she said yes. So that was our first big in. And then we decided, okay, how are we going to organize this entry? So we took the 12 colors on the color wheel, which if you look around, there's red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. And we offered those up as a color choice. So you registered and said you wanted to do it, whether you wanted to make 1 quilt, 2 quilts, or 3 quilts. You could make up to 3 entries. And then you put in your choice of colors, your first and your second and your third. And it was just so cool. So then this color tool that Joan produced is perfect. It's got 24 color cards, and it has all the tints and shades of whatever color you're picking, whatever color you're going to be working with. So you got a card for your assigned color, which also shows you the color wheel and different things that you could do with it, but you could only use what was on here. And because there's 24 of these, if you picked a color green, you might get 1, 2, or 3. There were 3 different color greens in 1 green. Because of the way these go together, we couldn't just take 1 and 2 and make it yellow, and 3 and 4 and make it the next color, and so on. So some color groups like green had 3 or 4 color cards, and you never knew which one you were going to get. And some of them had 1 because, they're screamers, like, yellow, right? Yellow takes up a lot of visual space, and if you look over here, you're going to notice that these green yellows and golden yellows are the brightest thing in the room. They draw your eye first. But the beauty of having this in a circle is when you're turned around, you don't notice that, and then everything else becomes important too. So the great thing was everybody got their first choice of their colors. But we also had another choice. For those that were willing to take a risk, you could say, surprise me. So, usually what I was expecting is if you're going to get surprised, you're going to get all the colors nobody else wanted, usually yellow. But that didn't have to happen. We had, across the board, we needed to get more reds and oranges and purples and blues. Purple and blue were probably the most popular colors that everybody wanted. But we were able to assign an even amount of everything to ensure we would get enough of every color to have a juried show that came together. And it worked really, really well. We also decided that they all needed to be the same size. And I thought, you know, not very wide and very long gives you a really interesting challenge of, you know, how are you going to design this so that it makes sense and it follows all the design principles, and yet, you know, you still have to create contrast. And so some of these, you can see they're actually a thing, right? You can see what they are. And some of them are very abstract, and they create nice texture and all those kinds of things. So we decided on 45 inches long and 15 inches wide. And I think it's really cohesive. I love the way they hung it here. This is the second venue for the show. The first venue, I had to hang. To get 62 quilts with slats in them, all exactly the same height and the same 2 inches away, that's all we had. We had 2 inches between, and we had to use this as a catalog. We didn't have the luxury of putting up all the artist statements. But when I walked in and saw this, I thought, you know, this is a really nice way to hang this show, don't you think? It still groups colors together in such a lovely way, and it's interesting to walk around and see it all. Let's see if I left anything out. I don't think so. We did get 110 entries, which I think is pretty good, considering it was 2021 and things were starting to come back, but not that much. I decided that we'd have a Facebook group. So when everybody first put in and said, I want my colors, and those were mailed out, the second phase was a few months later when it had to be, well, 6 months later, when it had to be made and submitted. And the Facebook group was there so people could ask questions. You know, well, can I veer off the color of my card because my quilt's not as interesting? It's like, no, that's the challenge. This is all you get. Suck it up, buttercup, make it happen. And I gotta tell you, my vision of this in my head when I first thought of it was not nearly as spectacular as this looks. All these artists jumped in and they just did an incredible job. And I'm just so pleased about it. I want to walk around and talk about the ones that are my favorites, but before I do that, are there any questions so far? Yeah.
So it looks like you didn't even let her use black and white.
Thank you. I knew I forgot something. It got stuck and it wouldn't come out. Yeah, no black and no white. So, because that would stand out and pull your eye in. Okay? Now I think I remembered it. Thank you. Okay. So what I want to do is I'm going to read the artist statement to you because I know it's hard to go around and read all of these. This is one I like quite a lot, and I think Deb has some interesting things to say. It's called Yellow Submarine. It's by Deb Cashat. By our quilts send messages inviting discovery and analysis. By stitching bits of fabrics together, I create intricate puzzle-like shapes reminiscent of graphics used in both Mayan script and modern computer icons. I employ these shapes, which I call symbol graphs, so she coined that phrase, to tell stories of modern life. The compositions morph as I intuitively add more symbol graphs, often curating these graphic elements into tidy, rectangular containers, suggestive of comic books and Chinese curio boxes. Viewed from afar, each work of art can look as incomprehensible as a cryptograph. However, as you move closer, guitar chords, a drum kit, and a submarine emerge to make you chuckle and maybe even create your own story. So I've been watching her with this new series that she's doing. She was half of the Pixel Ladies, and they've since not really split up, but they've decided not to make quilts together anymore. So Deb's out there, and you know, here it is. You notice it, but you don't really pick it up right away, but here's the instruments and the submarine, and doesn't that just kind of pull you in and make you think? Kind of like a Where's Waldo kind of thing. So she's really good at that. And then this one caught my eye as soon as I saw the photograph of it. This is Bias Tape Beauty by Jane Hanson Haworth. And I'm gonna try and say this word right. She says, I took a series of photos of these, it's I had to get on Google and figure out how to say this. Eonium. Okay, Eonium succulents. Does anybody know succulents? Am I saying that right? There we go. What she said. Aeonium. Outside the lobby of the Monterey Plaza Hotel in downtown Monterey, California. They were the largest succulents I had ever seen. Looking at my color card, they were a perfect hue of green for this project. I cropped the image for the correct dimension and blew up the succulent so it was off-center. As I make a lot of raw edge collage quilts, my challenge was how to portray the light edge along each leaf. Talking to a friend, we came up with using bias tape. It was the perfect solution to define the leaves and hide some of those raw edges. So what I find so interesting is with the limitations that she has, she's really created a 3D thing. It just pulls your eye right in. And the light on the edges is exactly what you need to define the outside of those shapes. So I thought that was pretty spectacular. Okay, where's this one? Okay, mine, you know that. Okay, this one I like right here. It's got some beautiful embellishments on it, and a lot of art quilting embellishments are becoming more and more popular. Some people really like them, some people don't. I remember being at a quilt show you remember when Houston had a whole embellishments area in the retail thing, and it was just becoming popular, but before it did, people didn't really like shiny things on quilts. I heard all kinds of comments of, why'd she put that on her quilt for? And now here we are, and we love it, we embrace it, because it lends some real beauty. So this is called Cats and Dragons by Tracy Slate Fisher. I equate a prism with joy and light, an encompassing of all things that when merged create warmth and inclusion. I can so clearly see the installation of this work. Numerous voices in color, all singing together in harmony. To me, the colors aqua and blue are watercolors, cool and soothing. A peaceful complement to the hot colors the prism provides. I love spending time in nature and wanted to convey a place where I spent many happy times with my mom and grandfather as a child. My first time working monochromatically helped me grow as an artist. So when Tracy talks about hot colors, if you're not familiar with the color wheel, a hot color is a red, an orange, or a yellow, like this wall over here. And then cooler colors are greens and blues and purples. So you kind of get that, do you get that feeling when you look at them? They make you feel warm or make you feel cool and calm. Okay, this one, I have to tell you, this one's my very, very favorite. You probably have to turn around. Who doesn't identify with this? I saw this, I was like, oh my God, that is so, so, so cool. So this is called Blue Violet Hand by Sandra Bruce. Blue violet is my favorite color. I was drawn to this 15-inch by 45-inch format, which is such an interesting and challenging space to work in. Thinking vertically, an image of my arm with a needle and thread in hand popped into my mind. I'm left-handed, and my hand has played such an important part in my life, from ASL signing with my deaf parents as my first language, to my career as an illustrator and letterer, and of course sewing and quilting. And sewing handwork has always been my favorite, so this quilt pays homage to the origin of what we do, sewing with a needle and thread. And if you get closer to it, you can see that her quilting design mimics all the wrinkles we have in our hands. And of course, the older we get, the more of those we get. So, well, I know it's not fair, but you know, it is what it is, right? But I think it's just so pretty. I just want to touch it. You're not supposed to touch it. Right?
Right.
Don't touch the quilts.
Do you need my gloves?
Okay, this one back here, Red Violet Riot. This stands out a little bit from the others in that she's used the prairie points that we know is something very traditional, but she's made them three-dimensional. She's printed on her fabric, done some beautiful things, created some contrast, and she wanted the shadow to come out and create more texture. So Barbara Kibbe says, Red Violet Riot plays with the tints, shades, and tones of red violet. With the help of prairie points, it also plays with shadow and light. It is an experimental excuse me, it's an experiment with a range of inks and paints applied to various substrates, exploring the way various materials absorb and reflect color. So you've got to think about that, absorb and reflect. I hope the playful nature of this experiment comes through and that Red Violet Riot gets invited to lots of parties. And this is Barbara, she's the one that helped me with this whole exhibit. She's wonderful. She's a retired lawyer. She handles all the details. I don't do details. I just do pretty. And then this one way back here, we all had a chance to take a look at this. Travel companion. You know, just about anything with a kid is tugs at your heart. And this is by Kathleen McCabe. I took my 7-year-old grandson on a road trip, excited to have him as my travel companion. He brought a travel companion of his own, which we can all see as a tablet. He's probably playing games and watching movies, and it's so today, right? It's just kind of how we've always got our phones. We're always looking at things on our phones, and Grandma thought she was going to have fun with him, and he's like, no, I got something better to do. This one's mine, so I'm going to touch it. But this is kind of indicative of a series that I was working on a little bit after the big 3D explosions. And what I was doing is I was playing with distortion. So this flower right here in the middle was the original drawing. And I drew it on the computer, and then I stretched it longer. And on the bottom, I stretched it wider. So your eye tells you that it's the same shape because it is, but it's distorted to be wider and longer, which I thought was really kind of fun. That's kind of my thing with art. I just have 2 more. Okay, Clint, where did she go? Who doesn't like Art Deco? This is called Golden Girl by Jan Souls. I find women's portraits painted by famous artists intriguing subject matters. This work is based on Gustav Klimt's famous painting of Adele Bloch-Bauer, completed in 1907. His work uses gold leaf to create drama and a sense of decadence and richness. When I received the gold and yellow card, I immediately thought of this work and wanted to try to reimagine it in fabric. I hope you enjoy my interpretation of this regal woman, complete with Art Deco motifs such as squares, circles, and evil eyes. Those are just, they just look at you and you're like, oh God, what do they see? Okay, and then the last one is Courage. And I really like what she has to say. So this is by Denise Schmidt. The Prism exhibition celebrates color, and my assigned color was golden yellow. When black is added to golden yellow, the result is a spectrum of golden brown tones, sometimes looking slightly green in some lights. I employed the golden pure yellow color on the plaster wall, using hand-dyed Osnaburg to give a rough texture, contrasted against the brown tones of the smooth stones on the staircase. The golden light spilling down the stairs and the old man with a cane who has just climbed all those stairs gives the piece its name, Courage. Which I think without reading this, I don't know if I would think that. I think I would think something else. But that's what it took for me to put this whole thing together, because it's, having never curated anything before, here, I'll save your next. Having never curated anything before, I stepped into this and figured it out by talking to people and just from the ground up. Any job I've ever had, I just kind of get thrown into, and I think that's the best way to learn. Sometimes you need to have some information on the front end, and sometimes you just need to close your eyes and jump in and see what happens. And I think that's part of the reason we were able to come up with this unusual idea for this exhibit. And it's been really cool because I've had people call me and say, we want to do something just like that. Do you mind? And it's like, no, let's do it. It's fun to do. It's fun to be a part of it. Let's see, lastly, we had 2 of our members put together this catalog. So I told you this was like a fundraiser. So Sarah Goer's superpower is layout, and Deb over here, her superpower is photography. So when they did the layout, you can see on the cover there are pieces of each quilt laid out into a fan, right? So you all shop for books. I don't know if any of you have published books, but the cover sells the book. you're gonna walk over to a whole bunch of books and pick up the one that is most attractive to you first, right? So with this one, Sarah, God, I love Sarah. She put colors on all the edges here. So if you're looking for something blue, you're gonna probably open it pretty close to the one you're looking for. And then when it's laid out, there's a whole quilt picture, so you can see the whole thing, and then a close-up with the artist statement. Very simple and to the point. And we're pretty proud of this. And what's also interesting, I think, is the shape of this book really plays well with the size of the quilts, don't you think? So we got lucky with that. And I think that's all of what I have to tell you. Do you have any questions? Yeah.
Did you reshoot the quilts for the book, or did you use the original photograph?
We used the original photographs. We had them give us something that was strong enough that we could work with. And Deb had to work magic with a couple of them, but she's a genius and we love her, so yes. Yeah, we considered that for a couple of them, that we did have the artist reshoot them and then work with that. But that was gonna be so expensive, you know, it's just too much.
Do you have those catalogs here?
Yes, I brought 10 of them with me, so they've got 10 of them out there that you can buy. Yeah.
If we don't get them today, are they available elsewhere?
Yeah, you can get them on Amazon. Yeah, but please buy them from the museum because that helps them out and we want them to be here. Yeah, I know, there's more, but they'll take orders for you too. If you don't want to go through Amazon, they'll order them and then we'll get them here as quickly as we can. Anything else? Yeah.
One of the free points, is that all fabric? It almost looks like paper.
She has different substrates in there, and so I think they are paper. I haven't actually run my hand down it as much as I wanted to, you know? I mean, don't want to touch these things. But yeah, so Barbara likes to work with all different kinds of things, and she came up with our region's next exhibition, which is now traveling, called Printed and Stitched. And she got a printing, a guild, it's a group, but it's like our guilds, our quilt guilds. And the art quilters together, and they had to do some printing on some fabric or some sort of substrate, and it had to mix quilting with printing, and it turned out pretty spectacular. Yeah. Anybody else? Did you learn anything today? Oh, good. Oh, good. All right, well, if any of you want to come and talk to me afterwards, that'd be great. I brought some business cards. There's different, these things are, anyway, there's different pictures and stuff on them, so if you want one of those, you're welcome to one of those. All right, thank you very much.